So, with the recent release of Title Update 8.5, we finally got a fix for a lot of the, well, not so correctly performing gear sets that are in the game right now. In particular, gear sets like the Hardwired gear set and the Striker's gear set were largely not functioning the way they were supposed to be before this update went live, and thankfully now they're working a bit more consistently. For Hardwired, it was something like the backpack ability wasn't working on it. For Strikers, it just straight up wasn't counting a good percentage of the shots that you put out there. And of course, for those of you agents out there who don't know, with Strikers, weapon hits will amplify your total weapon damage by about 0.5% per hit, stacking up to 50 times. Meaning, by accurately landing shots on enemies, you can build up a 25% base damage boost to all of your weapons, basically all of your outgoing weapon damage. 1 stack is lost for each second you're not firing, and 3 stacks are lost every time you miss a shot. That's the basic ability on Strikers, and that's really what wasn't consistently working before this most recent title update. So it basically wasn't tracking any of the shots you were landing on enemies. So if you were fighting like a heavy tank, maybe a Riker's tank or something, and you're just laying into them, the stacks that you should have been building up weren't. So that's what got fixed with Strikers. It's now for the most part fully functioning in the game. But is it worth using, was the question that immediately came to mind. Of course, I, like a lot of you other agents out there, probably excitedly jumped onto the game to try out some of the gear sets that previously weren't working and see how they fare. And to be fair, Hardwired is pretty great. You can do a lot of things with skill builds in-game now. You can be a massive healer who's healing people for like 2 million health and armor every time you fire a chem launcher shot at them. There's some pretty good explosive builds that you can run with right now. I've got a Hardwire build that I'm kind of tinkering around with before I make a video on it, where basically I deal like 4 to 5 million damage a shot with a sticky bomb grenade, and then I just immediately refresh it by pulling out a drone or something like that. So Hardwired is in a pretty good spot. It could probably still use a little bit of a buff, but it's in a good spot. But what about Strikers? Strikers is that classic Division 1 pinnacle gear set. It's the one a lot of people used to use because of the sheer amount of damage you used to be able to build up with it. Is that really worth using in the game right now? And well, spoiler alert, honestly, it really kind of isn't. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about exactly why that is. So, I threw together a quick couple of builds for Strikers based on maximizing weapon damage and critical hit chance. At its normal peak, Strikers generally grant you a base 25% damage buff at 50 stacks that can be increased to a 50% weapon damage buff if you're using the gear set's chest piece. Attribute-wise, it's just as much weapon damage and critical hit chance and critical hit damage as I can fit into this build. So, here's the thing. Even with a build like this, Strikers is still very limited in what it can offer for an in-game player, and the marginal payoff you get for using this gear set just isn't worth the hassle right now, if you were to ask me. In order to fully utilize Strikers, you basically have to be nearly 100% accurate, or you're not going to actually get the benefit of that 50% weapon damage boost. Losing 1 stack for every second you're not firing, plus up to 3 stacks for every missed shot, or I guess 2 if you're using the backpack, is way too punishing for a build that's only promising you a 50% weapon damage buff and nothing more. Put shortly, Strikers asks far too much for far too little. Although I guess I could say another benefit of using Strikers, at least the 3-piece, is that you get a 15% rate of fire increase, which does, of course, add to the total bonus damage that you're going to be outputting. Your DPS is going to go up with that. But because even if you were to be absolutely perfect, we'll say, and get those stacks up to 100 for the 50% damage boost, like without missing a shot, you're still going to be dealing generally less damage than a mostly well-rolled all-red crit build rocking something like the Coyote's Mask and Perfect Glass Cannon. And I mean noticeably less damage. You can test this for yourself over at the shooting range. I set up 2 different Strikers builds, one utilizing the Strikers chest piece for that 50% damage boost, and one with Perfect Glass Cannon, so I'm only getting 25% extra damage from the gear set, but also a boosted 30% damage on top of that. And guess what? Both builds fell short, far short of what I can put out with my regular DPS build that doesn't require me to have perfect accuracy before I can actually hurt anything. Remember, with Strikers, the problem here is this. You have to land a bunch of shots to ramp that thing up to max stats so that you're actually getting the bonus damage there. This is a problem, not for high-end builds, which, by the way, Massive should absolutely not nerf, but for the Striker's gear set, which just doesn't offer anything truly worthwhile when it's supposed to be like the big DPS gear set. Plus, you're also missing out on a ton of extra crit chance and damage thanks to the gear set only having 2 attribute slots. I think that's a major issue moving forward. I know why Massive only put 2 attributes on gear sets, to try to balance them out, but I think really with the way the game is balanced right now, you're missing out on way too many points statistically. They should just, if they don't want to give 3 attribute points to gear sets, they should up the total amount of stats that can come on those gear sets. I don't know, maybe something like that. But anyways, because of the way Striker's stacks work, you have to land a lot of shots before actually seeing any benefit from the gear set, and missing any of those shots takes way too much of a toll, especially in a game where enemies rarely stay still. And because of this, you're basically kind of incentivized to get close to enemies without much to show for it. This is actually a problem that was solved in the Division 1 via the classified strikers granting you much more weapon damage, basically twice as much as it does here, while also giving you the option to self-heal by landing hits on enemies. This is the kind of change Strikers desperately needs right now, because the benefits of using this build are lost far too quickly as is. I think Massive should probably rethink the way this gear set works. Maybe tune the amount of stacks lost via missing or not firing, and also increasing the total amount of damage full stacks allow for. I definitely think that would help. This should be the big DPS option for gear sets, an alternative for high-end crit builds that offers its own special flavor. But as it is right now, things break down like this. With Strikers, you have to do a bunch of work landing shots to get the full 50% weapon damage benefits, and you can lose those benefits really quickly by either not firing or by missing a few shots. With a crit build, you can get just as much, if not more damage right off the bat without having to invest in perfect accuracy. And you know what? So long as that stays the case, I can't really say I'll be playing much with Strikers. Now, of course, to be fair, this isn't to say that Strikers can't work in endgame. For instance, you can toss on something like a shotgun, maybe the automatic one, like the AA-12. I forget what its name actually is in Division 2. But you can toss that on like the showstopper in Division 1 and build up stacks really quickly thanks to pellet spread. You'll just have to, again, worry about getting close to enemies, which in heroic and legendary content, if you want to get right up on top of enemies without wielding a shield, go right ahead. But for me, I'm more than content to just stick to my high ends until some of these gear sets see a revamp in the future. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll just stick to the script that they did with D1 and announce classified gear sets again and make things way better. I'd be okay with that. But anyways, I just wanted to get my thoughts out on Striker's Battlegear now that the stacking is actually working consistently in-game. Again, thanks to Massive for doing that. Be sure to leave me your thoughts on this gear set down in the comment section below. Have you used it in in-game settings? Do you find success with it? Share some of your tips down there. And of course, if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. Gonna be putting out a lot more Division content moving forward, especially now that, a lot of the gear sets have been fixed. Like I said earlier in the video, I've got a couple of hardwired builds that are a little bit nutty. Cluster mines are a little bit silly with this, but having a 5 million damage sticky bomb is just, mwah, it's beautiful. I wish we had some of the mods we used to because it mixes in perfectly with that. So we'll be having videos covering that kind of stuff coming out real soon. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I am the Black Link. You agents, stay frosty.